into the career services that they provide. So,
all right, guys. Good evening. My name is Rich Fan. I work in obviously pretty place assistants. My goal is to kind of give you a little insight into the career handbook you have there, the services we perform, and ultimately answer any questions you all might have about our office and what we do. First of all, I want to tell you there is no perfect answer to any of the answers. There is no perfect answer. There's no silver bullet to getting a job. There are some things we can tell you that are going to make you more successful, make you a better candidate, but there's always going to be that X factor, be it networking, be it getting to know a professor, little things that might be the difference that ultimately, having your name on one side aligned on the page instead of the other isn't going to really solve. Does that make sense? So when you come in to meet with us, obviously we are going to go over your resume, go over your cover letter, personal statement if you're applying to a grad school, give you evaluation of that. And by no means should you not take that to a place like the Writing Center to make sure that we didn't miss anything grammatically. But as we're there, I'll speak for myself. I'm going to make sure that your voice is what's coming out of this. What I mean by that is if you're applying for a position and you have a ton of experience and you're writing a cover letter about it, the employer should be so excited about that cover letter that they forget about reading your resume and they just bring you in. You should be able to show them through your research, through your passion for the field and your interest, why you're the best candidate. So when they do look at your resume, that's only reinforcing what you've already talked about. And that's what we would work on. Typically during the day, if you had questions, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., we have walk-in hours. So you can see any of us on staff for about 20 minutes, depending on the situation, and we'll go over whatever you want to go over, be it something as simple as a resume or cover letter, or as complicated as, let's say you have an interview coming up and you don't have time to do a mock, we can do a mini mock. We're located on the second floor of the Union, so we're pretty easily accessible. So if you did want to come in and do a full-time mock interview, you could do that as well. As I'm being filmed now for this presentation, we could do the same thing with you guys. We'll film you, and then afterwards, it'll be either a half-hour mock interview. We'll give you plus minuses, what you can do better, what things you need to work on, things like that. So ultimately, you're the best candidate for whatever you're applying for that you can be. I'm not one for talking at you. I'd rather do more of a question and answer session. So I just wanted to throw those introductory things out there about our office, what we do, where we are, and then answer any questions you all might have. I listen to your instructors' awesome talk. Like for instance, if you are undecided, you can come into our office and use any of our assessments. Typically, we'll give you the Myers-Briggs or the strong inventory. Typically, for myself, I give you the strong inventory to see if you are a person that might have interests that you don't necessarily know how they all add together into a career choice. And much like she mentioned, if you sit in our office and you go through the results of your assessment and you feel like this isn't you, this isn't a conveyor belt. We're not going to say, well, this is what the answers said. That's why we like to call them assessments instead of tests. In a test, you have a right or wrong answer. And an assessment is really going to be interpreted based on the mood you're in. For instance, if you're answering questions on the strong inventory and your roommate is arguing with you because somehow clothes got on their laptop or something silly like that, you might be in a different state of mind when you're filling out the assessment than if you were in what we call a shoes off, relaxed situation, where you can kind of just think clearly about each answer that you're given. Those are going to be the little differences, and we might even tease things out if we see that your assessment comes up with a lot of variance. So if you say at one point you're interested in math, but then later on you say you hate math, we'll ask you, well, why is that? Was there anything that was bothering you? Was there any precipitating factors during your assessment that might have thrown you off? And we try to be almost detectives and figure out why it was that you weren't really all in on a certain subject or all in on a certain career. Some of it might be family related. I know a lot of students, you might come in with a stress because college is expensive and maybe your parents are saying, hey, you got 3 years to get your degree, get out, let's do this. I know I've had students tell me that, and then we've tried to work on a plan to get them out in 3 years because they don't have that time for exploration. They really have to dive in. That might not be you, that might be you. Obviously, some of the things we talk about in our office are going to be confidential, so don't worry about, something being called home or something like that. You guys are all upperclassmen. I'm used to talking to freshmen, so that really isn't a big deal in your case. But I'm going to stop there before I ramble. Do you all have any questions or anything I can answer for you about the career process for you all as upperclassmen? warn you, before I did this job, I worked for the Department of Defense, and before that, I was a resident director. So I'm okay with silence. Really good with it. Okay, while you're thinking, I'm going to go through the book, and one of the things I wanted to point out was the majors section. On page 14 and 15, you see the listing of the majors. And the reason I'm bringing that up is one of the first things I'll do when I meet with you as a student is highlight to you that just because you have a major, that doesn't necessarily correlate to you having a career, and vice versa. So for instance, if any of you are interested, what's your interest as far as career goals? What would you like to do?
I like to be a teacher.
Okay, what's your major right now?
Math.
Okay, what about you?
I think I want to do counseling. My major is sociology and urban studies.
Okay.
I think I want to be a psychologist.
Okay.
My major is psychology.
Data management.
Actually undecided about
Okay.
I would like to be an audiologist or a speech pathologist.
Okay. And what major are you right now? SLP?
Yeah, well, communication science and disorders.
it. Teacher.
And what subject are you looking at?
History.
History. Okay. So now I heard a lot of primary majors and also heard a lot of secondary majors, minors, undecided. There isn't one math teacher, there isn't one history teacher, there isn't one database manager that's going to come out with just that major. You're also going to have your electives, you're going to have your minors, you're going to have ways while you're here at Pitt to either explore opportunities that might not necessarily be career choices, or to heighten your skills so that you stand out from the crowd in your field. What I mean by that is, when you come into our office, we have plastered up with one of those target wall scripts, make your passion your profession. And when I meet with you as a student and we talk about what you want to do, one of the first things I also say to you is, not every passion needs to be a profession. What I mean by that is, sometimes as we go through the strong inventory, for instance, it might show you're a good math teacher, you might be interested in teaching, but it might also show something like you are strongly tied to doing something entrepreneurial. That might not be what you want to do as a career. You might not want to tie yourself to some grand idea and dive headlong into it. You might love teaching and that's what you want to do. However, if that passion isn't necessarily a profession, it's a hobby, it's something you want to do, you might have a little, I see you wearing a scarf, you might have a scarf making business on the side. And it's absolutely silly, but it's, something you might want to consider. And the reason I say that is, a lot of times, everyone tries to pigeonhole every single activity that you love doing into the perfect job. And what you do when you do that is you'll never find the perfect job. You want to try to find, when you're using your career exploration, or even when you're contemplating job offers, is this the best possible opportunity for me at this time? If it is, consider exploring it. If it isn't, consider other options. If you try to find the perfect job, you're going to get rid of, when I was in high school, actually, I lied. A couple of months ago when I was coaching, one of my coaches always says, don't let great get in the way of good, and don't let perfect get in the way of great. So what that means is, just because you found a great job, because it's not the perfect job, don't push it to the side. Consider it. Because whatever you're missing from that job that you feel like you need to be fulfilled to have a strong, purposeful life, you can try to find that outside of work. Because, it could be 9 to 5, it could be 10 to 6, it could be third shift, whatever it is. At the end of the day, you're going to come home at some point, and that's when you can explore those other opportunities. Does that make sense? All right. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
It's kind of abstract, but how do you know if you chose the right major? What goes into choosing a major? Sociology is my primary major, but then urban studies is just one I picked up. How do I know? How do you know if you should keep that?
I'll put it in the best way I can say, especially from my neck of the woods as far as career services goes, is, do you feel like this is a nice portable major that you can fit in an interview into what you want to apply into?
Yeah.
Then it's a good major.
Okay.
One other way you might want to consider is, how can this strengthen what I'm going into? So for you in your case, since you want to go into counseling, if you were interested in going to private practice, maybe at some point you might want to take a few business courses, or perhaps pursue an MBA, so that way you could have the business acumen as well as your counseling acumen. So things like that, start evaluating, what else do I want to add in my toolbox? What other things do I want to play around with so I have these in my back pocket so I can use them if I had to? That's how I would evaluate it.
Okay.
Any other questions? one thing I learned. One of the other assessments we do is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. We find out all the different funky personality traits you may or may not have, and their traits, their tendencies. They're not, this is you in a box. But for those of you who prefer to get your energy from the outside world, what they call the world of extroversion, you know, constantly chatting. I always give the example of my wife, who's given me permission to talk about her craziness. She's the type of person, if all you guys are in a room at a dinner party, she will be mad at me if we left before she got to talk to all of you. So that, as an extrovert, they get their energy from that. Whereas some people who are more introverted, their energy is the world within. Their thoughts are all up here. So when you're doing a presentation, I learned during one of my seminars, you should always give a good 10 seconds when you ask, is there any questions? Because for the extroverted people, they want to talk, speak, talk, think, talk. And the people who are more introverted in their processing are going to be think, speak. So if you give them a couple of seconds, that's when you get a question. If you're just going to say, oh, on to the next one, it really, that person always had something to ask. So think about that when you're doing a public speech. Now, is there anything I can ask or answer for you guys about our office?
Can you do multiple mock interviews? Like, can you come in like often and do them?
Oh yeah, all of these services are completely, as many times as you want to come in, and it's basically going to be subject to amount of free time we have in our calendar to service what you want to do. You can sign up either one of three ways. You could come into our office or call our front desk, the number of which is both on the book and on my business cards, which I'll give out at the end of this presentation. You can go on to Future Links, and for those of you who don't know where Future Links is, on your My Pit portal, click in the right-hand corner, Future Links will be there. You could actually sign up yourself for an appointment with any of us. I would just make sure if you look on our website, we list who covers what areas. In your case, if you wanted to do a mock interview, you'd be meeting with me. So you just find me, see the times I'm open, they'll show up in green, pop yourself in there and just say you want to go over interview skills or do a mock interview for any of the audiology programs you want to apply to, and we'll go from there. And we can do those as many times as you want. You can not only do them as an appointment, but you can come in any time between 10 and 5 and do what we call a mini mock, and that'd be like a 20-minute mock interview. Not as long as a traditional 30-minute, but it's still a good one to get you going. And if you're coming in for a mock interview, we can be as simple as you sit down, I ask the questions, you give an answer, we review them, or as sophisticated as you show up dressed like you would for your actual interview. And we'll evaluate you from the time you come in the door, whether or not you're on time or late, what you're wearing, is it professional, body language, speech inflection, and all that fun stuff to figure out how good you did during the mock interview. Did that answer your question?
You did, thank you.
Yes.
What do you have in regards to like job shadowing opportunities or connecting with alumni? Is there anything that Career Services does to help on that?
Yeah, we do both. With our job shadowing program, not only do we have you shadow with people here, but if you're not from Pittsburgh, and obviously you're going to go home for some of the vacation time, either during the summer, in the spring, or during the winter breaks, we have what they call shadow in your city. So we try to place you with an industry leader in your hometown. For instance, if you live in, it's typically going to be the major cities. So if you live in Lancaster, PA, it's most likely going to be either King of Prussia, well, not really King of Prussia, but more of the Philly area, as opposed to, say, right outside Lancaster. If you live in DC, it's going to be pretty much DC, Baltimore, DC Metro. So what we try to do is that way you don't have to worry about, because I know not everyone can afford to fly out to some place and just do a shadow day and then come back. If it's where you live, it's going to be nice and easy, low stress, a couple of days you spend with this employer, they show you from top to bottom what their office does, and kind of entice you as an undergraduate student to either apply down the road or consider going into one of their junior management programs and figure out after graduation if this is a place you'd like to associate yourself with. As far as the alums go, we have a number of networking events throughout the year where we'll bring an alum to hopefully either network with you all or give you an opportunity to talk with them and figure out what they're doing for a living is something you'd like to do. That's a great low-risk opportunity for you to practice your networking skills, because if you think about it, any person that's coming in, either if they're local or even flying in, because we will have people who do that, loves Pitt and loves working with you guys so much to help you that they're going to sit here, they're going to eat hors d'oeuvres, they're going to just wait for you to come up to them and ask or answer any questions that you have or they may have for you. And obviously we'll do some presentations either here at the ARC or in our offices if you need assistance in learning what you should and shouldn't do with networking, what you should and shouldn't do as far as reaction times, thank you notes, post-interview etiquette, things like that. So that way you are ahead of the game as far as being a good candidate. For those of you considering going into the world of work after you graduate, you definitely want to consider the next 2.5 months is the opportunity that you should start heavily applying and inquiring after your application as to whether or not what's going on in the process of the job. Just shooting out, gone are the days of just sending an application in and hoping that they're going to get back to you. The more active, the more engaged you are in your job search process, the more likely it is you're going to get responses, interviews, second interviews, and job offers. If you just send it through Monster or even through FutureLinks without following it up, you're most likely not going to hear from anyone because they have so many applicants that they just couldn't possibly, unless you're a person that's engaging with them, entertain all of them. Did that answer your question, Chase? Okay. Oh no, did that answer your question?
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect. Are any of you considering taking any graduate school testing like MCAT, PCAT, GMAT, GRE, etc.? Awesome. We have an agreement with Kaplan, and you're going to be getting an email in the next week or two from me that you have free testing on campus. So on February 22nd, we're going to have over in the Cathedral of Learning, and then we don't know yet which one, and it'll be online, is also going to be on the 5th floor of the William Pitt Union, free testing for all the major tests. So instead of it being the full 4-hour test for most of them, it'll be about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it'll approximate most of the subject matter. There's no tie-in to Kaplan as far as you being obligated to buy anything, but if you are interested in any of their services, they're there to speak with you, and they're not really pushy. It's been a really good situation with us. We've worked with Kaplan, been a part of 5 years, and they've been nothing but great with us, and they also offer you guys, for anyone who goes to any of the tests, an opportunity to win one of 2 each semester scholarships to go to their courses for free. So that's a $2,000 value that they're just giving you just to go take a test, either in person or they have what they call Classroom Anywhere, where you can take it online and approximate, most of the tests now are going to be digital anyway, approximate the situation in which you can be taking your test anyway. So that's a good opportunity. So if you're interested in it, definitely, I'll do that before I forget, definitely shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to give you the details as I get them. So now I've been rambling like a madman for a good bit. I'm not taking any extras. Thank you so much. Is there anything I can talk to you guys about? Give you some tips on? Yes, sir.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? How did you go through college? And what was your career?
Yeah, sure. I actually went here for undergrad and grad school. I was a psychology, political science double degree. So I stayed a 5th year to get 162 credits to have both of my degrees. And it was that much because I also took French and Russian. And when I got here to Pitt, I decided I just wanted to stick with Russian. So each semester I took 18 credits because every time, those of you who've taken languages, it stinks. You get it to 13 credits, and then that language course the first 2 years, another 5 credits, and there you go, 18 credits. So I took Russian, and then I took so much Russian that I decided to get the Russian and East European Studies certificate. After I did that, my senior year, or not my regular senior year, not the super senior year, I decided that I wanted to work for the government. I knew I wanted to do something in particular. I wasn't sure what, so I decided I wanted to do intelligence and analyze basically counterterrorism, transnational organized crime, things like that. Here at Pitt, YSPIA is one of the best places to go because Phil Williams and I'm trying to think, well, at the time he was here, but now he's gone. Donald Goldstein were one of the foremost authorities on transnational organized crime in the case of Dr. Williams. And in the case of Dr. Goldstein, he is the living authority on everything that happened on Pearl Harbor. If you ever saw the movie Tora, 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 old black and white movie about Pearl Harbor, he wrote the book At Dawn They Slept, which was based on that movie. In fact, he's probably one of my most favorite professors here at Pitt, next to Phil, because he used the residual money he made from that book and then later the movie to take every year his classes to Washington, D.C., do a shadow day at the State Department, meet with people from the Department of Defense, pay for our hotel room, take us to a steak dinner, and then bus us to Gettysburg, and we could go over the battle that occurred there. And so that was just awesome. That was an introduction to grad school I did not see coming. After I graduated from grad school, I worked for the Department of State, Department of Defense for a little bit, in the law enforcement section at the embassy at Moscow. So I was in Moscow, Russia for a bit, did work with counterterrorism, counterfeiting, things like that. It was a very fun job, very rewarding job, very dangerous job. I didn't necessarily enjoy it, and I did what I do with most of you all students now. I sat in my cubicle in Moscow, wrote down the things I liked about my job, wrote down the things I didn't like, and wrote the things I thought I would love to do if I had $1 million. And the two things that came up was working with students, teaching people, and coaching, because I love coaching football. I love working with kids, developing people into leaders. So after that, thought about it, prayed about it, left my job, came back here to the States, began to work for a very small college in Pennsylvania, Mansfield University. For those of you who know Central PA, it's like right at the tip of Pennsylvania, southern tip of New York. If you think weather's bad now, they usually get like 20 inches a day during the winter. It's horrible because it's built inside the base of a mountain, so it just always. And then I began dating a young lady here who's now my wife, so I began looking for work here in the Pittsburgh area. And I had been an RA here as an undergrad student, so I came back here to be an RD, and then there was an opening in the career development office, and I thought it was a better fit for me once I got married, as opposed to being in a residence hall with 800 kids and my wife. That would be kind of awkward. So I transferred into career development. I've been there the last 5 years, and I've been coaching at North Hills in the area for the last 4 years, and I've loved both ever since. I try to live what I do. What I don't get out of this job, I get out of coaching, and vice versa. I love doing these evening programs because when I was an RD, my idea of being on duty went from 6 p.m. to sometimes 6 a.m. So staying late till 9 or 10 o'clock at night isn't a big deal. I have a 2-year-old now, so sleep was never an option before as an RD, not an option now. I'm kind of good. So that's where I'm at. And that's why I can say with all honesty, most of the people in my office have degrees in counseling, psychology, like Brian, who's giving a presentation right down the room right here with Mr. Cherry, he has a PhD in psychology, he's a counselor. I have experience in counterterrorism, transnational organized crime, biological weapons, and interrogation. Those have nothing to do with career development except for some of the transferable skills. Listening, being able to be intuitive, trusting your gut, helping students research, because the biggest thing I learned in grad school was the more research you do towards something you enjoy, what they called at the time your G2, the more you research something, the better you're going to be about it, and the more confident you talk about it. And in the case of you all, when you're applying to schools or applying to jobs, the more you research the subject that you're applying to and you can tell them about it, the more they're going to love you and want to hire you over someone else. I can't tell you the number of students I just sat down for an hour with and had them look at a professor's Google Scholar page and look at their publications or anything they've done as far as scholarly work, and they went to the office hour and said, I'd like to be in your lab because I see your work on peptides. I thought it was great. I read your paper from 1997. I thought it really should have gotten an award. I mean, you don't have to suck those things an award, but that person got the lab job on the spot because no other student ever came in there and told them about stuff they'd done 10, 15 years ago. And not every time it's not going to be like that for you, but the more you can practice doing that in your life, the more likely you're going to be prepared for when those opportunities come. So given that, do you guys have any questions, comments, queries? Okay, well, I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm going to stand right here, so I don't know if you guys still need to record me, but I was going to, if you have any individual questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking during the presentation, I'll be more than willing to answer them for you. Hail the pit, have a great night, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.